Hi Music 103B students, Dr. Schultz here, hope you're doing well. This is a video about spelling and identifying secondary dominant chords. And you'll want to have your textbook for this video, page 249, self-test 16-1. And I'm going to be looking at a few examples from the self-test 16-1 with you here in the video. Now remember, in order for a chord to be a secondary dominant, it has to be spelled like a dominant chord. Now, a dominant chord can be a triad, a major triad, like a 5, right? Or it can be a major minor 7th chord, a 5-7 of something. So all the secondary dominants will be spelled as either major triads or major minor 7th chords. Now, the other thing that's helpful to remember is that secondary dominants are typically chromatic, meaning they have notes that are outside of the key signature. Now, there are a couple exceptions to that, and we'll look at those later, but make sure that you're adding in accidentals that are outside the key signature when you're spelling these secondary dominants. That is, for the most part. All right, well, let's begin here. This is on page 249. Self-test 16-1. This is number 1 in the self-test in part A, and it's in the key of D major, and it says 5-7 of 4. So when you actually say the chord, when you say a secondary dominant, you just use the word of for the slash. So it says in the key of D major, I'm going to write a 5-7 of 4. Now notice the inversion symbol for secondary dominants always goes on the top part of the slash symbol. You can see that. Even for triads. Here's a 7th chord. 7th chord, triad, 7th chord, right? And the bottom chord is always a triad. And not only is it a triad, but it has to be a major or a minor triad. Because remember, you can't have a secondary dominant of a diminished chord because a diminished chord doesn't represent a key area. So only major and minor triads, and only those that are diatonic to the key, can be on the bottom part of a secondary dominant. Now notice here, the 4 is major because in a major key, 4 is major. Okay. Now, first thing you want to do when you spell secondary dominants is to write your key signature. Now you're writing the key signature for the key that you're in. So we're in the key of D major, and we're going to write a 5-7 of 4. All right, next thing is you want to think about what is 4. So in the key of D, 4 is G, right? Then you want to think, what's the dominant of G? Now, it's really easy to think what the dominant is of a note. You just go up 5. Or you can think the 5th of that chord. So GBD, the 5th of G major is D. Okay, let me go over that one more time with you. So in the key of D, the 4 chord is G major. 5 of G is D. Okay, now once you've arrived on this note, then you want to spell this chord. And in this case, we're spelling a major minor 7th chord. Spelling a major minor 7th chord on D is D, F sharp, A, and C. Now, I like to mark in any naturals that I have to mark in later in the music just to remind myself. So notice the C natural is outside of the key signature. It's chromatic to the key signature. So when you put it back into the context of the key, you mark in the C natural. Okay, now notice this chord is not this, right? This chord in the key of D major is spelled D, F sharp, A, and C sharp. The C natural is outside of the key signature. It's chromatic, so it's suggesting that it might be a secondary chord, right? Secondary dominant in this case. And notice how it's spelled. It's spelled like a major minor 7th chord, D, F sharp, A, C. Now there's a little trick. Whenever you have a secondary dominant of 4, you're basically spelling a dominant 7th chord on scale degree 1. You see how that worked? Because 4 in the key of D is G, and 5 of G is D. It puts you back on the tonic note. All right, the next one we're going to look at is number 4, and it's in the bass clef. It's in the key of B flat major, and we're going to write 5 of 5. Now notice this is a triad, whereas the last one was a 7th chord. So a secondary dominant, again, is either going to be a major triad or a major minor 7th chord. All right, first thing, write in your key signature for the tonic key. Okay, now this says 5 of 5. So the first thing you want to think about is what's 5 in the key of B flat? F. Then, what's 5 of F? 5 of F is C. Okay, now once you've arrived on that note, you want to spell this quality. So the quality you're spelling is always the top part. In this case, a major triad. Major triad on C is spelled C, E, and G. And again, notice I marked in the E natural here to remind myself that when I put it back into the key signature, I will have to mark that in. Now, of course, if I left the E natural off, I would have C, E flat, G, which is 2. C, E natural, G in this key is 5 of 5. Now, usually what ends up happening in a chord progression is that the next chord would be 5. Likewise, in this chord here, 5, 7 of 4, you would expect the next chord to be 4. And this is what our book refers to as a temporary tonicization. That is, having a 5 going into its tonic. Okay, next one, E minor, 5, 6 of 5. This is going to be another triad. As always, start with your key signature. So in E minor, we have 1 sharp. 5, 6 of 5. So the first thing you want to think about is what's 5 in the key of E? 5 is B. Then, what is 5 of B? Now careful here, it's not F, it's F sharp, right? 5 in the key of B is going to be F sharp. Now in this case, we want to spell a major triad, right? So a major triad on F sharp is F sharp, A sharp, and C sharp. Now when we put this chord back into the context of E minor, notice that the F sharp's already in the key signature, but we will have to mark in the A sharp and the C sharp. I'm putting it in first inversion, so the third's in the bass. So F sharp's already in the key signature, but we do have to mark in the A sharp and the C sharp. All right, here's number 8. And it's an E flat major. So we'll start with our key signature. And this one says 5, 4, 3 of 3. Now notice this is going to be a 7th chord. And notice that in the major key, 3 is minor. So remember, this bottom part will always be a diatonic chord to whatever key you're in. It always has to be a major or a minor triad. 5, 4, 3 of 3. So first thing, in the key of E flat, what's 3? Well, it's G. Now notice I'm just putting a generic letter name. It really is G minor, but it doesn't matter actually when you spell the chord. So it is true that it's G minor, but you're just really looking for the letter name to spell the chord on. All right, what's 5 of G? D. Okay, this time we want to spell a major minor 7th chord. On D, D, F sharp, A, C. And notice I marked in the A natural because when we go back into this key, I'm going to have to mark in that A natural. 543 puts this note in the bass. Okay, and D, F sharp has to be marked in, A natural also has to be marked in, and C. So really whatever it takes to make this chord spelled correctly in the context of the tonic key. So in this case, we had to mark in an F sharp and an A natural. All right, here's number 9 in the same section. It's in the key of F major, 565 of 6. So as always, start with your key signature. Next, we're going to ask, in the key of F, what is the 6th chord? And the answer to that is D, right? Now, of course, it is D minor, but it doesn't matter because the dominant in the key of D minor and the key of D major is the same spelling. So this is kind of a little shortcut. I'm not writing D minor here. I'm just going to write the note D, the pitch D. And then I'm going to think, what's the dominant of D? All right, so 6 in the key of F is D minor. 5 of D is A. Okay. Now this time we're spelling a major minor 7th chord. So on A, it's going to be A, C sharp, E, and G. And notice the C sharp is the only chromatic note in this chord outside of the key of F. We'll put the C sharp in the bass. Okay, there it is. Okay, the next one we're going to do here is number 11. And number 11 is in E major, and it says 5, 6 of 2. This is going to be a triad in first inversion. Start with your key signature. Okay, first thing, as always, is in the key of E, what's number 2? Number 2 is F sharp. Now be careful. If you thought it was F, you're going to have the wrong spelling. So make sure that you recognize that in the key, whatever key you're in, make sure you use the accidentals from the key signature. So in the key of in the key of E, 2 is F sharp. It's F sharp minor, but again, it doesn't matter because 5 of F sharp minor and 5 of F sharp major is going to be the same spelling. Then, what is 5 of F sharp? Now again, be careful, it's not C, it's C sharp, right? Here we want to spell a major triad. You know what kind of chord to spell by the top part of the secondary dominant. Major triad on C sharp, E sharp, G sharp. And we want to put the 3rd in the bass. C sharp's already in the key signature. I do have to mark in the E sharp, and the G sharp is also already in the key signature. So again, whatever it takes to spell this chord in the context of that home key, the tonic key of E major in this case. All right, and here's number 13. It says 5, 7 of 6. B minor is the key, so we're going to write in our key signature. Now in the key of B minor, 6 is G. 5 of G is D. Now this time we want to spell a major minor 7th chord. So on D, that would be D, F sharp, A, C. I'm going to mark in the natural again to remind myself to mark it in later. Then put it back in the key here. Root position. D, F sharp's already in the key signature, A, and then I do have to mark in the C natural. Okay, I also wanted to show you the the sort of odd ones that happen only in minor keys. And they're odd because when you spell them, they don't have any notes that are actually outside of the key signature. Now, if you notice all the chords that we spelled already, each one of them has at least one or more notes that are foreign to or outside of the key signature. Okay? But there are a few exceptions, and these are actually the only exceptions, and they only occur in minor keys. I just wanted to show them to you so you're aware of them. 5 of 3, 5/7 of 3, and also 5 of 6. When you spell them, they don't have notes outside of the key signature when you're in a minor key. So G minor, first of all here. 2 flats. Okay, now in the key of G, 3 is B flat, right? 5 of B flat is F. And so for 5 of 3, we'd spell a F major chord. And notice it doesn't have any notes that are outside of the key. Now if I add a 7th to it, I'm just going to add an E flat. And again, the E flat still belongs to the key signature. Now you might recognize this chord as being 7 or 7 major minor 7. Now when you see this chord in music and the next chord is 3, you're most often going to use this analysis because it does sound like a dominant going to its temporary tonic. You might remember that we used this chord in the sequence of 7th chords that are all a 4th apart, the parallel 5th sequence of 7th chords. But typically in music, you're going to use this analysis. All right, the other one is 5 of 6. So here in D minor, what's 6 in D minor? B flat, right? What's 5 of B flat? F. And again, notice it's spelled F, A, C. No notes outside the key signature. However, notice if it was 5/7 of 6, it would have an E flat, which is outside of this key signature. Okay, so when you have 5 of 3, 5/7 of 3, or 5 of 6 in minor keys, just be careful. They don't actually have notes outside the key signature, but they could be considered to be secondary dominant chords. By the way, it was just coincidental that I ended up spelling the same triad here between the two keys. Could have been in any minor key. Okay, and to finish up with the how to spell secondary dominant demonstration, I just wanted to give you one that often brings a lot of questions, and that is a dominant of 7 in minor. Now let's talk about this chord in minor. Here we are in the key of C sharp minor. I'll write in my key signature. Now usually we're used to spelling this chord, right? Usually in first inversion, or it could even be a 7th chord. And this chord, keep in mind, is spelled on the leading tone. Now notice the leading tone is a half step below the tonic. However, this chord, which we're looking at here as a secondary dominant of, is spelled on the lower number 7, which is the note from the key signature, a major second below the tonic. Remember that you're not able to have a secondary chord of a diminished chord because this does not represent a tonic, a temporary tonic. Does not represent a key area. This chord, though, does. It represents the key of B as a temporary tonic. Okay, so keep in mind when you have a secondary dominant of major 7 is always a whole step below the tonic. In this case, spelled on B. Okay, then the dominant of B is F sharp. And this time we want to spell a major minor seventh chord. I know that because the top part tells me which type of chord to spell and also what the inversion is. So F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, and E. Put the A sharp in the bass. Okay, now F sharp's already in the key signature. The A sharp has to be marked in. And the C sharp is already in the key signature as well. So F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E. Okay, now we're going to look at how to identify secondary dominants. And this is on the same page in the textbook, 249, self-test 16-1. This is part B. So we're going to look at a few from part B here. Now, the first thing you want to think about is, in order for a chord to be a secondary dominant, it has to be spelled like a major triad or a major minor seventh chord. So if you don't have a major triad or a major minor seventh chord, you know it's not a secondary dominant. In our homework, they actually ask you to use X for that. Now, the other thing will be to notice that you have a note outside of the key signature. So notice how most of these, with the exception of this one, we talked about the exceptions earlier, most secondary dominants will have a note or more than one note outside the key signature. Okay, so let's take a look here. First thing you want to do, as always, is to put these notes into thirds so you're understanding what the root position chord is. And you can see here the chord is spelled E, G sharp, and B in root position. Okay, now that's a major triad, so it is very likely that we've found a secondary dominant here. Now the next thing you want to ask yourself is, where is this chord 5? Okay, so if this is 5, if you're thinking E major is 5, then you're going to ask yourself, what's 1? Now remember, 1 could either be major or minor actually. So it could be, we don't know yet until we know where this is the dominant. Okay, so if E is 5, 1 is A. How do I know that? Well, the quickest way to think about it is just go up a fourth, right? Because if you're on the 5 chord and you want to get to 1, you just go up 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, right? So if this is 5, the temporary 1 is A. Now in this case, and again, it doesn't really matter, but it is true that in the key of G, A is minor, okay? But remember, this would be the dominant in the key of A major or A minor. All right, so again, E major is the dominant to the key of A, and in the key of G, A is number 2. Now remember, the bottom part of this chord has to be diatonic to the key. Okay, let me go over that one more time with you. So this chord, E, G sharp, B, is major. So we're suspecting that it might be a secondary dominant, has a note outside the key signature. And the question you have to ask yourself is, if this is 5, what's 1? Or in other words, E is the dominant to what key? To answer that question, just go up a fourth from the root of this chord, right? Count up to 1, what 1 would be. So up a fourth from E is A. And then you ask yourself, in the home key, how does A function? In the key of G, A is number 2. You know it's minor because 2 is minor in a major key. So notice it could either be 5 of A minor or A major, just depends on the actual key that you're in. Okay, number 3 is the next one I want to look at here. E flat major, treble clef. So here's the 3 flats in the key signature. And again, first thing you want to do is put this chord in root position. So you can see it's spelled F, A natural, C, and E flat. That's a major minor 7th chord. Again, it has to be either a major triad or a major minor 7th chord to be a secondary dominant. You can see this is a major triad with a minor 7, so it's a major minor 7th chord. So you want to ask yourself, where is F7 the dominant? Okay, so where's F7 the 5/7? What key? Again, to answer that question, go up a perfect fourth, right? Because you're just going up to the temporary tonic. So if F is your dominant, F, G, A, B flat. B flat is your temporary tonic. So F7 is the dominant in the key of B flat, right? Then you want to compare this to the home key. So in the key of E flat, what number is B flat? And the answer is 5. Now notice the 7th is in the bass. We put the inversion symbol on the top, and then the 5 on the bottom. So what this is saying is that in the key of E flat, this chord is 5/4/2 of 5. Now if you reverse the process, you can check it. In the key of E flat, what's 5? It's B flat. What's the dominant of B flat? It's F. Okay, but when you're identifying it, you don't really know that until later. So when you're identifying it, you say, I have this chord right here. It's a major minor 7th chord. It's an F7 chord. Where is F7 the dominant? F7 is a dominant to the key of B flat. In the key of E flat, B flat is number 5. Here's number 5. This one's in D minor, treble clef. Here's our 1 flat in the key signature. And again, the first thing is take these notes and make sure you understand what root position is. So here's root position, D, F sharp, A, C. Recognize that that is a dominant 7th chord, major triad with a minor 7th. And so, as always, you're going to ask yourself the question, where is D the dominant chord? Well, D is 5 in the key of G, right? Now, it could be G major, G minor. Again, we don't know until we put it back into the context of the home key, the tonic key. But in the key of D, how does G function? Well, G is number 4. Now, because we're in a minor key, 4 is minor, right? So remember that the bottom part of the label, of the secondary dominant label, always has to be a diatonic chord to whatever key you're in. So if you're in a minor key, 4 will be minor. So again, D7 is the dominant to G, and in the key of D, G is 4. You might have also recognized the shortcut that I told you about earlier in the video, and that is, whenever you have a major minor 7th chord on scale degree 1, it will be the dominant of 4. Okay, here's number 7. Now, number 7 looks a little strange because notice there are no accidentals. But it still could be analyzed as a secondary dominant depending on the context in if it was in a real piece of music. So let's take a look at this one. A minor, no key signature. G, B, D, F. Well, you can see that is G7, right? It's a major minor 7th chord on G. So you want to ask yourself the question, where is G7 the dominant? If G7 is 5, your temporary tonic is C, right? G7 is a dominant to the key of C. In the key of A minor, C is number 3. So this is one of those odd ones that we talked about earlier. Doesn't actually look like it's spelled like a secondary dominant, but it could be. Now, if the next chord were 3, you would definitely want to use this label because it's going to sound like a temporary tonicization of C major in the context of A minor. Okay, so again, G7 is a dominant to the key of C. In the key of A minor, C is number 3. You're in a minor key, so make sure 3 is major. Remember the bottom part of the secondary dominant chord label, the bottom part, should always be diatonic to the tonic key. So if you're in minor key, 3 is major. If you're in a minor key, 4 is minor. If you're in a major key, 2 is minor, for example. Okay, and to finish up here, we're going to take a look at numbers 8, 10, and 12. Again, we're identifying secondary dominants. And I'm going to move a little bit more quickly here, just to give you some more examples. So number 8, B minor, bass clef. Here's our 2 sharps. And the chord is in root position already. It's spelled C sharp, E sharp, and G sharp. Notice that's a major triad, so it could be a secondary dominant. Remember, the question you want to ask yourself is, where is C sharp 5? In what key is C sharp the dominant chord? Because you're thinking about this as a temporary dominant to a temporary tonic, right? So where is C sharp the dominant? C sharp is the dominant to the key of F sharp. Just think up a perfect fourth, right? If this is 5, this is 1. So C sharp is the 5 in the key of F sharp. Then in the key of B minor, what number is F sharp? It's 5. So this is 5 of 5. Now notice the top part tells you how the chord is spelled and the inversion. So here we have a triad in root position. The bottom part is a diatonic chord to this key. Okay, number 10, A flat major, bass clef. Here's our 4 flats. And the root is A flat, right? So it's A flat, C, E flat, and G flat. And again, if you notice that you have a dominant 7th chord spelled on scale degree 1, you can pretty much stop and just say, I know this is 5 of 4. But we can go through the process as well. So notice this is a major minor 7th chord, major triad with a minor 7th. A flat is the dominant to the key of D flat, right? So this is 5, 7 in the key of D flat. And in the key of A flat, D flat is number 4. Now this time we're in a major key, so 4 should be major on the bottom part of the Roman numeral. All right, last one here. We're in the key of E minor, bass clef. There's our key signature. And the chord, the root of the chord is G here. G, B, D, F natural. Now that is a major minor 7th chord. Major triad with a minor 7th, so it could be a secondary dominant. Notice the F natural is outside the key signature. We have a chromatic note. Again, ask yourself, where is G the dominant chord? So you kind of pose it like a little formula. If G7 is 5, 7, what's 1? Remember, just go up a fourth. So if G is your dominant, your temporary tonic is C. Then compare this note to the home key. So in the key of E minor, C is number 6. Now remember, in a minor key, 6 is major. The bottom part of your Roman numeral should always indicate the correct quality for a diatonic chord from that key. The top part tells me how it's spelled. So here we have a major minor 7th chord with the 5th in the bass, 5, 4, 3 of 6. Now, if you want to double check it, you can always reverse the process like we did before and say, in the key of E minor, 6 is C, the dominant of C is G.